I just want to touch on one more thing because I think this is really important. It might be the thing that gets Agape shut down. Is actually when you mentioned the bondage porn, I thought of the sexual deviance and
The bondage porn.
specifically Jareth Clemenson.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with
Yes,
Yeah,
this
I'm
I've heard
familiar.
the
record?
story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So the story, did you? Has anyone gone into detail
From
about the
from
kids that would follow him around, the
I
private piano lessons?
no
Um,
no.
so
Now this is new.
okay, I'll
We're
go
gonna
into it.
we're going to put this on the
Um,
front, James.
This is exactly. If
A
you
little
go ahead
clip.
and move
Yes.
this around, yeah.
Yeah.
okay, so there were probably what I can assume to be three kids that were definitely gay at Agape, and two of them followed Jareth around like his little puppy dogs. Jareth was in charge of the computer lab, and they were always in there. And Jareth actually gave one of them private piano lessons.
Right on that note.
On that
Hello,
note.
everybody. Welcome to the Hammer Podcast. Today is December 15th, 2020, and I'm speaking with Calvin. Calvin went to Agape Boys Ranch from 2017 to 2018. And of course, we have the great James Griffey. All right.
No, just me.
Yeah,
No,
just
great.
you. Okay. No grade, no infamous, no nothing like that. Come on. Come on. Before we start, Calvin, like I talked to you before, I wanted to do a screen share and show the website for this place. Somebody actually commented on one of the podcasts. I think it was Alex's podcast, and let me bring up the screen here. There we go. Oh, it's called the Rare Breed. There we go. It should be coming up.
Yep, see it.
The website is called thekitcheninc.org. And this place, they call it Rare Breed, but it's basically a shelter for troubled teens, kids with trauma, stuff like that. It's in Springfield, Missouri. And, for anybody who is homeless and you're a teen, you can go to this place and they can help you out as far as, I guess, with clothing and stuff like that, employment opportunities, emergency shelter, things like that, even affordable housing, community
Wow.
housing. So, yeah, it's a place that, if anybody just came out of Agape here, if you can see here, they got showers, laundry, computer lab, kitchen, nursery, art studio, stuff like that. Even a computer lab. So if you want to, talk to your parents or email your parents or whatever, great little resource. You know what I mean? Yeah, Rare Breed Youth Service. That's what it's called.
Is there a phone number anywhere
Yeah,
that way if someone
it's
doesn't have internet?
yeah,
I guess they
right
can
here,
watch.
right there. Open Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. The information, I'll put it. I'll put it on in the description below. That way, parents and other people can see it. So
It's cool.
just in case, so it's a little tool that people can use because it's for at-risk homeless youth ages 13 to 24, and
Wow.
you can access free and confidential services at the Rare Breed Outreach Center. So you never know when someone's going to need it.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. All right. So we'll go ahead and start. It's like Griffey's on the top now and Calvin's on the bottom. All right.
All
Okay.
right.
So go ahead and start from the beginning. The floor is yours, Calvin. Go right ahead.
So, I mean, if we're going to start from the beginning, I guess my story really starts in January of 2017. I lost my father to pancreatic cancer. And that's kind of when, that's when I started to really act out. You know, mostly what I got in trouble for back then was I was 15 years old, and I had, I like to take my mom's car out for joyrides, basically. I was 15 years old, and I thought driving was the coolest thing in the world, and just I didn't want to be home ever, hardly. So
Right.
eventually, I got pulled over by the police. You know, I had started. My mom had caught me smoking weed at the time. I was 15 years old. She was obviously really worried, and then so I got through that year, and I got through that summer, and we were coming up on the start of what would have been my junior year of high school, and in September. And I remembered, I thought it was really weird because normally I would go to the high school and you get your picture taken, and you do registration and all that, and I didn't really do that year. I didn't really think much of it, and then I remember one night I had got home from work. I just crawled in bed. I was tired. I wanted to go to sleep, and I was suddenly awoken at like 3 a.m. by 2 off-duty police officers putting handcuffs in a walking boot, and they put me in the back of a Nissan Sprinter van.
What's a walking
Weird.
boot?
So have you ever seen an air cast?
Yeah.
Yeah, you use them for injuries, but they put one on me so that I couldn't run, basically, to slow you down, because you can't run in those things.
Right. Okay.
So, the handcuffs, if the handcuffs weren't enough, I was in a walking boat too. And, yeah, I was in the back of a van, and they wouldn't tell me where we were going for the first, hour or so. Finally, I'm from Wisconsin. We made our way down through Illinois, and somewhere around, southern Illinois, like Rockford or something like that. They finally told me where I was going, and they told me, that I was probably going to be there for a year. And I remember so much rage. I couldn't comprehend that I was going away for a whole year, because that's what they had told me.
Right.
I didn't end up staying for a full year, thank God. But yeah, so I was one of the kids that got the transport, and that's really freaky, man, to be just taken from your room at 3 a.m. Like that haunted me for a long time. I remember.
Was your mom there, at all? Did she say, bye or anything like that? Or they literally, these guys just got you, handcuffed you, and dragged you out, and you had no idea what was happening?
Pretty much. I don't think it's hard to remember. My memory's a little spotty from that night, but I don't think I said a word to my mom. I don't think I saw her. I think I just got in the back of the car because I didn't really have a choice. They told me that I could get in the back of the car, or they could put me in the back of the car. So I got in the back of the car, and yeah, I remember when we got down to Stockton, they offered me a last meal, and that's when I knew things were really bad. And I ate a Subway sandwich in Stockton, Missouri, and that was the last food from the outside world I would have until months into being at Agape. So then I guess that leads us to the intake. The intake is it's a little different for everybody. Mine was really pretty tame. I remember I got in there. There were a couple of students, and my intake staff member was somebody goes by the name of Sheldon. I've listened to a couple of these podcasts. People have talked about him. So yeah, I mean, they strapped me down, shaved my head. I got a lot of hair. If you can see this, I don't look good with a bald head. I really don't. It was yeah, I did not like that at all. But relatively uneventful. I didn't fight back because what are you gonna do?
Right.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I've heard of kids that didn't. At least they said they didn't fight back, but they still got restrained. They're like, "Oh, we're going to teach you what restraints are," and they still restrained them even though they weren't fighting back. Does that sound like that didn't happen to you at all?
I think what they asked me to do was perform a self-restraint, which is something that they use often there, and it's just it's basically you have to lay on your stomach and put your hands behind your back and lay perfectly still with your head to your side, and they tell you that's a self-restraint, and if you can do that, they're not going to tackle you. They did give me that option. I mean,
That's cool.
so I did that. You know, I mean, it's humiliating, it's degrading. No one wants to lay there. Well, you know, it's just degrading, man. But
Yeah.
you know, I did it. Whatever. We really didn't have much of a choice. I was 16 years old. I wasn't about to throw 3 students and a grown man off of me. So,
Yeah.
and then that brings me into, I wanted to give a little insight. I think this paints a really good picture as to what Agape is like. It was my first day there. I think I got there on a Sunday. So, you know, the shaved head, I get the Bob Barkers, the jeans, the orange shirt, all of it. And I remember I go down to the gym just because I got there on a Sunday afternoon, and that's generally free time, or it was at the time. So when I got there, Julio was not the
It's all right.
dean of students. Can you edit that out?
Yeah, he can
Yeah.
edit, so it's fine. Even if you slip
Go
like
ahead.
that, you don't have to worry about it.
Don't worry about
Yeah.
it.
But so we still had some free time, and I guess what I'm getting to is I remember I was having this conversation with Sheldon, and I was sitting down kind of on the bench on the side, and Sheldon was over there. He was monitoring the gym at the time, and he asked me why I was here, and I told him straight up I told him about my father passing, and I guess I was kind of looking for a little sympathy, looking to open up a little bit, looking to maybe like talk about something. And I remember he engaged me in that conversation for a little bit. I can't remember if he had said anything about his father passing, or just basically said that he was sorry for my loss. And right as I remember, I wanted to say something more. I wanted to start to talk about this because, my world was unraveling around me. And I just remember he basically said, "Yep, all right, everybody out of the gym. We're going back. We're going back to the dining hall." And I think that's like really pretty like thematic for the way a lot of kids stays at Agape goes. You don't get that chance to open up. You don't get that chance to like have any real moment to break through, or have anyone that's there to care. It's just
Well,
even if
Calvin,
you're getting to that point, it's back to the program.
Calvin, Jesus cares, man.
Jesus cares. Yeah.
Jesus cares. That's all
Yeah.
you need. That is all you need. Jesus.
Yeah, that was. And then there's one piece to this. I
Yes.
remember. So then the next day, Monday, your first day in school, right? So they don't let you start doing schoolwork at Agape until you have memorized every book of the Bible in order and can recite it.
Oh,
And
that's new. I didn't know
that's
that.
new.
Yeah, that is new.
Yeah,
Um,
that back in the day for like the guys that I knew, like it was based off your behavior. Just if they thought you're ready for school, it could take 2 weeks, it could take a month, it could take 2 to 3 months before you're in school. It's really about how you're behaving.
Oh,
So,
Yep.
you talk about just memorizing the books of the Bible, like Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, that kind of thing?
Yep.
Okay.
And you
all right. 66 of them, yeah.
Yep, they still did that. But
Huh.
like, if you got in trouble, you obviously wouldn't go to school right away. You would be in Browntown.
right.
I don't know if I need to elaborate on what Browntown is.
Well, you might want to if there's somebody who's just tuning in.
So Browntown, it's the punishment group, a group for kids that had misbehaved within the last week or two, and were serving their punishments. Those kids, they didn't go to school for even a minute during the day. They were doing manual labor all day long, and yeah, that was the punishment group. You got a brown shirt. You got to eat brown food, which is basically just it's peanut butter sandwiches and cold bean burritos and non-sugared cereal, and that's all you would eat. That was the punishment. Luckily, I wasn't really the type to act out. I learned pretty quick you have to put your head down and you have to stay, out of trouble, because who wants to lift rocks 8 hours a day
Yeah.
for free?
So basically, just mind your business, basically, and just,
Yep.
you know.
That was my whole strategy. And I guess the story I wanted to get to with all this is that so you memorize the books of the Bible to start school, and you also have to write one letter to your parents. And I remember I'm writing a letter to my mom, and I'm finishing it, and I break down, and this is a heavy letter. It's got a lot of like personal stuff about some specific situations and a lot of my personal feelings about the whole situation. And I remember I break down, and it's like straight out of a movie. I get one tear rolls down my eye, and I remember all of a sudden that I can't show weakness here. This is not, you can't show weakness in front of the
Right.
student body. You got to put that hard shell on. You got to put that brave face on for
Yep.
everybody. And I think that really was the rest of my stay there, was just building up that shell and just acting tough and trying not to show even an ounce of weakness, because some of the kids there, man, it seemed like they could smell fear. You'd watch them pick on the other new kids, and you just didn't want to be that guy that got picked on. So you had to. The way I thought of it is that I had to keep my head down, stay away, and I couldn't show weakness because that would make me a target. I just had to stay completely even keel, and it made me really numb overall to the whole experience. Just because everything was fake. Everything was a front or a face, and no one really ever showed how they felt. I mean, a couple kids would on their first day. You would get those kids who on their first day would get in bed and start crying, just crying like crazy. Kids who you would say are a lot tougher than me, just breaking down and bawling their eyes out their first night. But
There's no one to talk, like, so you're going through all this, you're dealing with this stuff, like there's no one, obviously, like you're saying, there's no one to talk to, there's no one you can confide in, no one, especially with
Yeah.
what you went through with everything with your dad, and realizing that maybe, I mean, I'm curious, that letter that you wrote, because this, you're sharing information. I know you don't probably want to share stuff that was already shared on another podcast, but I mean, it's all good information to hear, but you're sharing stuff that I don't remember, or maybe I missed this before, Jason, but I never knew about the memorizing the books of the Bible to get out of Browntown or new kid status, or the having to write a letter to your parents before they let you start going into school. So I mean, like, that letter, if you wrote that letter and you're like, screw you, mom, and I'm blah blah, I mean, obviously they wouldn't let you go into school. So I mean, did you feel like you had to write a letter that the staff would accept as a, like, you're sorry, that type of thing, or were you just being honest with the idea that they weren't going to read this thing and you were trying to really be genuine with your mom?
Well, James, it's a really good point. They didn't send my first letter. I wrote it, I enveloped it, I stamped it, I gave it to them, and my mom
Yeah.
never received it. And that's a really common story. They told me, all the students knew that almost nobody's first letter gets sent. Like, the first question they asked me was like, the other students who had been there for longer, they said, well, what'd you say in it? Did you ask to come home? If you asked to come home, there's no way they sent. And they would tell stories about finding piles of mail in the trash, piles of mail. Just that, like, you think you're getting a message out to your parents, but they're
Right.
cutting off that communication on purpose because they need you in the program.
Dude, it's been years, but I could vividly remember being at the school, and when they're calling out the mail, and you're just hoping to God that they scream your name, yell it out, that you got a letter from your family, because you would write them. And I remember writing my family and waiting to hear back. I don't know if they did this back then, but that feeling of wanting to, like, hear from your family, anything, even if it's just 2 sentences, something. So knowing that, you thinking that you sent a letter to your mom, and that you opened up to her, you shared all these things with her, said you're sorry, whatever it is, and you're hoping for a response from her, but they never mailed it, and now you're just stuck sitting there like, crap, like, my mom got this letter and she didn't even write me back. Like, does she even care anymore? Like, all these thoughts go through your head as a kid, and you're just like, I don't know what the purpose of that. Like, why would you not send a letter, even especially if you're not seeing anything bad in it? Like, why? That just sounds so messed up.
Yeah.
It is in a lot of ways. And sorry, I just lost a thought.
And,
Yeah,
and to
gone.
anticipating a letter is worse than actually getting the letter because you're
Yeah.
waiting
Oh,
and you're waiting and you're waiting. It's like, oh,
here's what I wanted to say.
yeah,
So I was really what I wanted was a phone call because I was convinced for my first little stay there that if I could just get my mom on the phone, I could talk her into bringing me home. I was convinced of that, and I remember they told me you can't have your first phone call until you've been here for a month, and I remember I got so mad. I was like, you go to jail, you get a phone call, right?
yep.
Even if
Right.
you're in jail, you get one phone call. And I remember I was talking to Sheldon about that, and all he had to say was, "This ain't jail, buddy." And it's like, no, it's not. It's not like jail.
It's
Or
worse. It's
it's
worse.
worse. Yeah. I mean, and it's really similar to jail in a lot of ways. Like if you've watched like 60 Days In or any of those jail type of TV shows, like it's so similar in like the attitudes of the students that you'll see and just the way they gossip and the way you'll just pick up on similarities if you've lived it. And
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
we were all just 16. We were all just kids,
Well,
and that's pretty much how we were living.
there are certain similarities between the two places, but jail is not going to throw you on the ground for
Yeah,
for complying. You know what I mean?
right.
If you're fighting with them, then they'll throw you to the ground. But other than that, if you comply, they're just going to handcuff you and walk you out, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily I never had to deal with because I was deathly afraid of like getting in trouble because I watched and I heard like what they did to kids. It obviously did not take long for me to see my first fight. I think it was my first week there, and they got 3 kids down. Staff members are just like leaning into them with all of their body weight, and most of the staff members there are, they're heavier set folk. I would say that's a pretty accurate generalization for the staff there, and just leaning in with their knees into these kids' backs with all their weights, and that was restrainment, and they clearly weren't fighting, but they just lay on them there for 15 minutes, half an hour, however long they felt like it.
Yeah.
And that thinking about that, you have this 200, maybe even 300 pound man on top of this. I mean, I was pretty skinny when I was 15, so this 15, 16-year-old scrawny little kid that may or may not be fighting back. It really depends on what's going on, and they're just putting all their pressure on him with like a knee like that. When
Yeah.
people say they talk about the restraining and stuff, I think people think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like, really, that's all they're doing. But
Mhm. Yeah, and
that's pretty painful.
that's like them being gentle, when they just have a knee in you. Like that's from what I saw, that was like their kind of tame sort of restraining methods. Um, I
Well,
was
I was gonna say, do you know what they did? These kids that were being restrained, that it's like that I don't want to. That's also another thing. I don't want to just focus on like staff restraining them. Maybe these kids were out of control. They were fighting and beating each other up, threatening. Do you know what they did to get restrained, or do you just saw them restrained?
almost always fighting, almost always fighting.
Okay.
I think, um, there were a couple occasions where that was not the case. There was a staff member there, Steven, that got into a lot of trouble he got into a lot of trouble for choking a kid who was just talking back, I believe. Sorry, a lot of these memories are really kind of foggy, and a lot of
It's all
it's
good,
pretty
man.
blocked out. But yeah, it was fighting was the number one thing,
Yeah.
and
Well,
Yeah.
you said that getting a knee is a mild form of restraint, but it depends where the knee goes. If it's on your leg, yeah. If it's on your neck, probably not.
yeah, no,
Right.
It all depends on where it's positioned on your body.
absolutely.
So
There was one restraining story I have that I can still, it's still super clear and vivid in my mind. I wasn't even there. So I guess I'll just tell you real quick. So the way they did it was during church. So this was really serious. So the way they did church was they had most of the students would sit in one section in the main church, you know, with the public congregation, and they would sit there and you know, be a part of the church. But we also had there was a separate church that if you're familiar with Agape, if you are in the uh, in the seating area looking up at the podium, it's off to the left and it's up and into an attic. And I'm
Didn't know that.
I'm forgetting the name of it, but it was like alternative church, or it was basically just church for kids that couldn't behave. If you were in Browntown at the time, you went to that service. And I remember there was just some real bad blood between these two kids, and the story was that one kid, Yarav, was he just laid out this other kid, Hollis, and Yarav was one of Julio's favorite students. So he was kind of a, you know, one of those tough kids from the streets that just Julio really loved. And I remember vividly sitting in church, and then the church kind of falls quiet for a second, and you can just hear this wailing, this just like this deep wailing and screaming, like from the bottom of somebody's stomach, coming from that left hall. And from I wasn't there, I was in the main church, but from everyone else that was there that told the stories, because obviously, you know, that's gossip, that's going to travel super fast. It sounded like what people said happened was that Julio actually restrained Yarav so hard that he ripped his shoulder out of his like socket and put it back in, all in one restraint.
Allegedly.
This is allegedly.
Yes.
Right.
I'm telling
But
you,
you heard the screams.
I can still hear those screams, man. Just like this super. It wasn't high pitched. It wasn't just like deep. Just like
A guttural scream. Yeah. Just
guttural screams. And we were in the church, and the whole congregation could hear it. The whole congregation could hear it, and it didn't stop. It was probably a good minute of just. Yeah, and I can still hear that when I close my eyes, man. I can still hear it.
You know what? You would think the people the people that were not at Agape, who were just there for the church service, would say something. I mean,
They're. I think that whole community, Jason, is convinced. You know, as is a lot of the world. You know, that hears about these institutions or Agape, that they're just troubled boys, or you know, whatever the story is. You know, like, oh, you know, he's being dramatic. He's just trying to get attention. Whatever the story is that Agape seems to share about these things is what people believe as the truth. And it's like, so who knows what they told them? But I mean, what was this? After this happened, right? You obviously saw the kid later. Was he holding his shoulder? Or he obviously couldn't do push-ups after having it dislocated, put back in. Assuming that is what happened. Like, was he like holding his shoulder, walking around, or anything like that? Or I mean, that's pretty.
No,
pretty
I can't vividly remember. Yarav was a really tough guy. If he was hurting, he would not let you know it. He was one of the scariest people I've ever been around, to be honest. But there's no way it felt good, and like that just, you know, to me that verified that if he was screaming like that, because this is a dude who you know, when he laid that kid out, he put the other kid in the hospital with his face swelled up to the size of like a softball.
Jeez.
You know, with like 2 punches, and that was the kid screaming. And you know, and Julio, if you're familiar with Julio, he's a bodybuilder. He's admitted to using steroids. He could totally just rip somebody's arm out of their socket. The dude's jacked.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Man, that's crazy. It's just, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, we always hear these stories on the podcast, you know, of these guys that are there and about what happened, and Jason's always like, man, I'm surprised someone hasn't gotten seriously injured or been killed or something like that. It's like something like that happening. Well, two things you said. One is the guy that had his shoulder taken out, but then the other kid that had to go to the hospital because his face was so swollen up, like that.
Yep.
That to me that'd be a red flag. You go, what do you tell the doctor? Oh, he fell down some stairs. I mean, and what do you tell his parents either? Like, I mean, I'm assuming they got the bill for the doctor, so it's like, oh, they got in a fight or something. I mean,
probably, yeah.
Probably.
I mean, but
yeah.
to rip someone's arm out of their socket, man, that is painful.
Right, and then
I've
putting
seen
it
that
back.
happen. I've seen that happen. That's I've seen tough guys just scream doing that.
Yeah.
That's painful stuff right there.
And I mean,
Jeez.
that's probably the worst instance of like physical abuse that I had seen. I know it was a lot worse in the 80s and 90s, and I've heard a lot of the horror stories about Brian Clemenson and that from other former students. And then honestly, we didn't go through that, not nearly, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
But where I think they really are, where the core of the problem is now, is just like the psychological abuse that these kids are going through. And I don't want to just totally play armchair therapist, but like as someone who's gone to therapy and like, it's just you get to kind of like learn what is healthy and what isn't pretty quick, because a therapist will tell you. It's just all of the behaviors there are not healthy. It's all repress and act tough, and it's designed, not designed because that would insinuate a purpose, but basically what the effects are is every kid leaves with some sort of lingering psychological issue, and that's really why I'm here. That's why we want to expose or shut down Agape boarding school, is so that they can't do that to any more kids.
And even stress takes its toll on the mind as well. I mean, look at some of these soldiers coming back from the Middle East. I mean, I'm sure
Absolutely.
they've seen some horrific stuff, and it takes a toll on your mind. And even if, let's say, Agape doesn't get shut down, I would still like to see them get regulated. Have the
Yes.
CPS come in there. If anything happens, they can go in there and take whoever they need to take to jail or whatever and prosecute them. Something has to be done. Either they get shut down or they get regulated, one of the two.
At the very least, some sort of accountability
Yes.
is what I would advocate for, because
Yes.
now,
more than likely, I'd like to see it shut down.
yes. Well, obviously that's our goal, but
Yes.
at the very least, some sort of accountability. Because I remember I was in there, once you're inside those, when I was at Agape, I was thinking about this. Once you're inside those maglock doors, there's really no way to get information in or out. There's no way if
Right.
there is no
there's no
accountability.
TVs.
You are trapped.
There's no TVs,
Right.
right? Nothing. Yeah.
That's nothing.
It's almost claustrophobic,
Yeah. It's
know
not like
those-
you have a. It's not like you have a. I don't know what you call it, like a counselor or someone that comes in and checks on you and to see how you're doing, like a third party coming in and saying, like, how are things going here? How's this happening? Like, I'm assuming in prison or something, there's some kind of third party that's monitoring or checking or seeing what's going on. But like with Agape, you're right. There's no monitoring. They monitor themselves, and then when authorities come to them, say, hey, we heard this is happening here. What's going on? Like, no, it's not, and we can verify it's not happening. It's like, you can't verify yourself. It's like come on.
Well, and that goes back to Sheriff Graves being married into the Clemenson family. They the authorities, they own the authorities. The authorities, I mean, as much as I thought Graves was a decent guy, at the end of the day, he would side with the Clemensons and with the school over a student every single time. no matter if there was real crimes being committed, real injustice or not.
It's a conflict of interest, is what it is.
Absolutely.
He shouldn't be there.
Yeah. Being on their payroll, like it's like even if it's volunteer.
Yeah, even if it's volunteer.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's interesting, and they're so deep rooted in that community over there, and everyone thinks that they're God's gift to all these young boys, and but the thing is that what you're talking about, Calvin, like this after effect, this mental after effect that happens, like mental issues, like you leave with them, you maybe have someone you go there, but you leave with more of them, and you just go out into the world, and it's like there's no support system, there's nothing for you, and you're stuck dealing with this, questioning it, and you've spent 1 year, 2 years being locked up and being unable to share your emotions, and you get out and you're having these issues, and you're like, well, I don't talk to anyone, I got to be tough, I got to keep it on the inside, and that's why these guys sadly end up killing themselves. It's like just dealt with it for so long.
That's when we talk about those that did take their own life, I think it's super unfortunate. Those are the people that kept it in their whole lives. They kept it in until their release was, death. And I feel really fortunate that I was able to attend therapy, attend counseling, have some really good people come into my life post Agape that where I'm not on track to do anything like that. But that's just not every kid has that support system when they leave.
Right.
And the result is literally death. We've seen it,
Yeah. And sometimes, let's say a kid goes in there and he's on some sort of psych medication or whatever. And of course, let's say, for example, he's there for a year or two. They take away their meds. So this person is without his meds, his meds, for 1 or 2 years. And let's say he gets out and he still doesn't have any way of getting these meds. He ends up being homeless or something. He's going to end up doing something, regrettable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if he doesn't get the help he needs.
And Agape says those are the guys that didn't listen to us. Those are everyone that's a failure that leaves Agape. Anyone that's speaking on these podcasts, like those are all the ones that didn't listen to Agape. Those are the failures. Those are this. It's like, but then you leave and go to Bible college, and these guys that are in Bible college, they're still having issues. Like they're still dealing with stuff, but they just decided to go a different path. But it doesn't mean they're not having issues. Like, man, that's awesome that you said you got counseling, right, or something, or saw a therapist. Yep. That helped a lot.
I saw a therapist along with some really great friends that kind of stuck by me and talked me through a lot of just because I didn't get that. I felt like I wasted my time at Agape. I wasn't moving forward. I was totally stuck, just totally stuck in terms of like a growth perspective. I was doing school. But it's ACE school, so you're really not learning anything.
Right.
We all cheated through pretty much all of it. Big news flash there. When you leave the answers to all of the curriculum unattended, the kids are going to cheat.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say 85 to 95% of kids, 100% of kids cheated in some extent on their ACE. Whether you were standing up at the answer table, asking your buddy what the answer to this is, or just straight up looking through the answer books and writing the answers in, because there was no monitoring, and we got away with it. Some kids got caught, but almost all of us got away with it. That were smart, at least. I mean,
I went on the ACE website yesterday, and I was looking through the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade books. You might as well just been reading the Archie comic books. That's all it is. It's comic books.
Yeah, and
it's ridiculous.
They're trying to teach you life lessons throughout it with these like comic characters and these weird situations that would just never arise in real life. And I just think it goes to show you just, in that IFB Independent Fundamental Baptist circle, that group.
Yeah.
Just how limited and sheltered their lives really are.
Yeah.
Honestly, I always, when I was there, the one thing that got me through Agape is we would be sitting there as students, maybe taking a group punishment, but I'd always look over at the staff kids and say, at least I'm not there. At least I didn't grow up here. At
Wow.
least I'm not here my whole life. And that was, one of the things that got me through is, hey, I could be living here from 0 to 18.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Now
That's
you said when you
rough.
you said you got counseling and everything from, I'm assuming, a state certified counselor.
Yeah, somebody licensed,
Right. Now
somebody
at
with a
Agape,
college degree.
there you go. At
Yep.
Agape, did you ever go and see their counselor?
Um, Once I saw Dr. Hartman once.
Okay.
Uh,
Now, you could see the difference between somebody who says, "Here, let me read some Bible passages to you, or you saved, brother," as opposed to somebody who really listens to what you have to say and tries to deal with real life problems. You know what I mean?
yeah,
There's a
I mean,
big difference.
well, Hartman, it wasn't even counseling. He just had a big book of lessons, and if you tell him something was going wrong, and he'd flip through his book of lessons that he had written up in years previous, and he'd kind of find your little remedy life lesson that was going to get you through that, and it's basically a worksheet.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but I think most people would agree the best part of counseling is not, the worksheets that they give you. Maybe a counselor will give you a worksheet in the start. Where you will actually see dividends from your counseling time is when you start to have real and open conversations with somebody you trust.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
yeah, there's none of that. You never even sniffed something that real. So
That's crazy. So you're dealing with depression or dealing with whatever, not you personally, but whatever you're dealing with, that is their way of counseling you, is literally this book. And it's like a Rolodex. It's like, oh, depression.
pretty
Oh,
much, he had them
oh,
numbered just like a Rolodex. Yep.
Read
yeah,
John
here you go.
3:16. Yeah, read John 3:16.
Yeah,
You'll be
here's
fine.
this. This is going to cure your. And it's like that. And parents are sending their kids to the school with the idea that they're getting help with these problems. They have depression, they have anger issues, whatever it may be, and like they're getting help with them. And that's the extent of the help that they're offered. Like if you read on the website or you hear them talk about Agape, they're like, oh yeah, no, we have a counselor here and he's ready, available whenever your son needs to talk to him about whatever. But knowing that is like, I want to hopefully clip this and clip that's how they handle the counseling there. It's
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yep. And more to that point, so knowing I was coming on here, I talked to my mom this morning and I asked her what was the one thing about Agape that really kind of, gave you a good hint that maybe it was time to pull me out. And well, what she said was that when she was enrolling me, she talked to the person in charge of admissions, Charlie,
mhm.
and she explained my whole situation to him, and she explained that I needed real help getting through this. And then when she came on my 4-month visit, and she talked to Alan, the principal of the school, and Julio, the dean, they had no idea about anything about me personally. They had never even, they hadn't gotten the briefing. My mom had literally asked Charlie to make sure that I get the help that I need. And it never even came close to fruition, even though Charlie promised and assured that, counseling would be provided and help would be on the way, essentially.
Wow.
Where did your mother hear about Agape?
So, it's kind of an interesting story. Word of mouth, my mom had a friend who sent her daughter to Wings of Faith. And she was there, and allegedly that was a positive experience. Now I know the person that she knew, the student that was at Wings of Faith that we're talking about right now, suffered from borderline personality disorder, and that's a really severe mental disease. If any of you know,
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
takes the lives of many people every year, and allegedly that was a positive experience, and that's why she picked Agape.
Wow. It's just, man, I don't know. Like, it's crazy to think. Hearing, I'm glad you said that about what your mom's experience was. So basically, you went through losing your dad. You're acting out. You're having all these problems. You don't know how to deal with it. You know, you end up getting sent to Agape, and you're there. Your mom tells them, "Hey, you know, he's dealing with all these things. He needs help with this." Given specifics, asked, "Can you make sure?" Yeah, 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 we will. We'll make sure that we got counseling. We'll do all this stuff. And the extent of the counseling you got was their Rolodex, you know, where you just go in and they pick it out, what a little lesson plan for you, and then none of the other staff knew what you personally were dealing with. So it's like none of them knew how to be there for you, like that. You said that Sheldon guy, you were bonding with him for a minute, kind of like trying to open up, but then he
Yeah.
just shut it down. It's like, okay, we got to go. Bye. Like,
Yep.
don't connect on that level. Like, so it's like I see why you talk about you can't be vulnerable there, because they didn't allow that at whatsoever. And if you were vulnerable, probably got your ass beat, you know, and picked on by those students.
Absolutely. I mean, that's honestly what was at the front of my mind most of the time at Agape was how do I stay away from the kids that can kick my ass, and how do I stay, out of, you know, staff members, because you'd watch staff members would pick on kids too. Um, I know there's a student that's been brought up on this podcast multiple times, Brandon. Um, and the staff member Sheldon would literally just bully that kid and just make his life awful, And he wasn't the only kid that got bullied by staff. I understand getting bullied by other students at Agape because, for pretty much every kid there, it was that classic like movie scene where, the bully is just as insecure and has it just as bad at home as the kid getting bullied. And that's just all it is kids that can't stand themselves and take it out on other people.
And they're teenagers.
Yeah, we're
teenagers
teenagers.
too. Yeah,
they're going through puberty. None of us really know what we're doing there,
Yeah.
or how to behave or act. I mean, a couple of us, there was a mature group that kind of like to separate from some of the younger kids, and it was a lot of these younger kids that did get bullied because they couldn't act right. And what I've always kind of said about Agape is, if you know the old saying, you can lead a horse to water but you can't make it drink. Agape is designed to make the horse drink by any means necessary, and like the kids being the horse. And that's their goal. Their goal is by any means necessary to just make you drink the water, make you drink the Kool-Aid and fall into line. And it just never happened. And sorry, I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent there.
Even if it means by force.
Yeah,
that's what
by
they're
force.
going to do.
By force,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's fine, dude. It's. I can hear it in your voice when you're talking about this stuff too. Like I know it's not probably easy either to talk about and recall this stuff. So I appreciate you doing it, but it's like, it's hopefully a parent's watching this. That's what happened with a few other guys on the different. Everyone seems to be different. Everyone has their own personality, their own everything. So your story's your own, and like you don't know that one detail that you're sharing about your experience. Like some mom or dad's watching this, and they're like, "Man, you remind me of my son," and like if I could not, now they know not to send their son there because they're dealing with this thing, and they think Agape is going to fix this, but hearing how they deal with it all, and from your point of view, so it's all these details, even if they're sporadic or they're rants or whatever, they help, and someone's listening to this.
Yeah,
and
it's not just one story, James. It's you, Jay, Mike, Alex. All these guys have come out. So
Yeah.
I mean, if it was just one guy, it's like, well, maybe, but no, those are like 15 or 17 or something podcasts now about Agape. So,
and not including all the ones you have scheduled too.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy, and it's just adding to it. So
yeah, and like I said before, James, every podcast just adds a piece of the puzzle. There's a few pieces here we didn't even know about.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So I guess.
We're going. Yeah.
So I guess what I really wanted to get into next was like, just kind of the day-to-day life at Agape and some of like the basic necessities that weren't being met for the students there.
Sure.
In the winter, we did not have hot water for showers. We were taking cold showers in November, December, and January.
Wow.
Just
There's
because
no hot
their
water?
water heater couldn't keep up. Sometimes it'd be kind of in the middle, and sometimes it'd be like frigid cold.
So you want to be the first one in the showers, huh?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
even the first ones, like you wouldn't, because they're trying to run 32 shower stalls at once or whatever it is down there. And
Yeah.
like cold showers, man, you can't even provide hot water for the kids.
Yeah.
That's
I remember the kids that acted up, and the new kids and the kids that were in trouble were the ones that showered last.
Yep.
You were always in the last group for us. Like you always put them in that, you know. So, dang, that sucks.
Wow.
There's one other thing that shows just kind of what is it, like a lack of control over the student body. So in my day there, like the thing that everybody wanted, because almost all of the students had some sort of drug or alcohol problem, some sort of substance abuse problem. The one thing that kids like to do there was, it's going to sound horribly disgusting, huff brake cleaner. That's what they would do.
Huff brake cleaner. How
So
do you get your hands on that?
there's an auto shop on campus, and there were only about 2 or 3 students that could get in there. But from what I heard is there were these aerosol cans full of brake cleaner, and they would spray them into water bottles, dap them on rags, and huff it, and they would just get beyond messed up. And this is what kids were choosing to do because it was better than sitting there sober in Agape. And I remember one specific story. A kid who was actually my buddy at the time got his hands on some, went in the bathroom, huffed so much during school that he was blacked out in, I remember it was bathroom number 5 in the school for 6 hours. He was blacked out in the bathroom. And I remember the other student body, because, it is very much a students against staff mentality. Kids would be allowed to clean the bathrooms if they wanted to take a break from working. And I remember this guy, Marco, he just covered for him the whole time. He'd just walk up and down because the brake cleaner had obviously a pungent smell. And he would just walk up and down and spray chemicals everywhere around stall 5. And he did it all day long, and the kid never got caught. No staff found out about it. I mean, there were kids blacking out, passing out, unconscious in the gyms.
Yeah.
I mean, just, torching their brain cells away on purpose.
Yeah.
And that was a really valuable thing. You had to trade something to get it. And kids were like giving up their clothes, their personal belongings, just for brake cleaner to huff, because that's where they were in life, that they just wanted to huff brake cleaner and not think about being at Agape.
It says on the can, harmful or fatal if swallowed or inhaled.
Yeah.
That didn't stop anyone.
Didn't stop anybody. Yeah.
Nope.
It's amazing that kid didn't die.
There were kids would do it regularly, fairly. Wasn't that hard to steal. Allegedly, the guy who ran the auto shop didn't pay hardly any attention to the kids. So, they turned their back for 1 second, and the kid's bringing a whole new water bottle back. And you don't need a whole lot, from what I heard.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's just. I mean, that brings up another point. Like, kids that are addicted to stuff. The kids are showing up. They're addicted to some sort of a drug or whatever. Getting there, and then having to go cold turkey. I mean, I remember kids freaking out at night, going through withdrawals, having trips, mine, hallucinations, because they're coming off the drugs, or they've lost so much weight. I mean, I don't know if I'm not a scientist, but I've heard sometimes you store that stuff in your fat, so they would be losing weight, and all of a sudden they'd or one kid had this really crazy acid trip one night, where he thought a piece of paper was cutting his mattress in half, and he was screaming, and staff what is wrong with you? And he's just maybe he was huffing brake fluid. I don't know, but it's just crazy, dude. It's sad that
it is, man.
Yeah.
And some people that I these were my friends, were doing this to themselves, and Luckily, I never even went that way. Um, but yeah,
And that kind of brings up a point, James. Maybe, and this is just my theory on it, maybe the staff was letting them do it so they could have a reason, being the sadistic weirdos that they are, they would have a reason to restrain them, throw them on the ground, hurt them. You know what I mean?
I mean, when would these guys do it? Like late at night when? Well, you're saying they were doing it even during school.
during
Yeah,
So I mean,
school,
during school. Yeah.
during free time,
but see,
weekends.
all this like not necessarily maybe to restrain them, Jason, but like you think about this, you're sending your son to the school, right, to be turned into men, godly young men, respectable, authority obeying young men. But you're not realizing that all the stuff we're hearing is there's the fights, the people getting jumped and beat up and everything, and there's no staff around. There's no supervision, like students supervising
Mm-hmm.
students. Like those kids aren't getting paid to be, stand-in staff members and do stuff. Like these kids aren't being supervised. Like it's like what probably one staff member for 20 kids, 30 kids, if that.
Yeah, 15 or 20 for sure. And I mean, we were all sneaky kids. Come on, we all had that background. Like we
Right.
knew how to be sneaky. We knew how to steal stuff. Like it's,
Yeah.
and it goes back to that. It was always a students versus staff first thing. If you had a beef with another student, you wouldn't rat them out to staff because it was, students first, fuck the staff, and fuck the school for one. So then that's, we protected each other. Like I
Yeah.
said, with the spraying regular cleaner all around the bathroom so no one would get caught. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
and we would just enable each other constantly.
And it's just crazy. Like, I mean, I know, like, even in prison, people get away with like sneaking stuff in or like that, making their own alcohol and stuff like that. But it's just the more you describe this stuff, it just sounds like if I didn't know any better and you didn't tell me it was a boarding school that you were in, you just described what you went through, I would assume you're talking about prison. You know?
That's,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's the sad thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you know the some of the kids there, were they really young, like 10, 11 maybe?
I think about the youngest that we had was maybe 12 or 13. Um, there was one kid there, Hayden. He was a 14-year-old with Tourette's. And I had never felt more bad for a kid in my life because he was a 14-year-old adopted kid with Tourette's that was literally there because he had Tourette's.
Wow.
And, he wouldn't be able to control it. And sometimes he would blurt things out in church. And that's just not, they wouldn't treat that as a Tourette's breakout. They would treat that as absolute blasphemy, because you're
Right.
disrespecting the house of the Lord at that point.
Yeah.
And, that kid was in Browntown all the time because he had Tourette's.
Well, if
And
that
they did.
if that's the case, then I guess the staff should be guilty of destroying the temple of the Holy Spirit, being in your body, if they're beating these kids up and ripping the arms out of their sockets.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they
goes
took
both
that
ways.
really seriously. I guess I have a good story about that.
Sure.
This was towards the end of my stay. We were in a chapel session. So this is post Julio becoming dean. I guess let's just talk about that transition real quick. I forget who was running the program before Julio, but it changed about my second or third week there. And the first thing Julio did was he eliminated weekday free time. It was, the schedule was after school, we went to chapel and then we went to bed. There was no more free time in there. So we were in one of those chapel sessions on a weeknight, and some kid thought it would be funny to play a prank on one of the slower kids there. And he put some toothpaste on a church chair and watched the kid sit in it, right? While we're standing up to sing the song. And then,
Right.
so the punishment for that, one kid putting toothpaste under another kid's butt, was they moved the entire school to the unheated gym this is in probably January. To an unheated gym. We were doing all of our schoolwork on the floor in the gym for over a week. Like, they
Just
took
sitting on
our
the
chairs and our desks from us, man. Like, they took our chairs and our desks because we
Jeez.
had disrespected the house of the Lord like that.
And it was cold there, like in January.
Yeah.
I mean, like that. It's like snowing. Like it's winter time. Like
And
it's not like
that gym's not insulated or heated at all. It was probably 50 degrees in there, 55. Like, where you get your one little sweater, but you're still cold.
Oh yeah.
You know, you're stuck there.
Oh yeah. We know the Wisconsin winters just as bad.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Those group punishments. Like one. It's almost like they're designed to make sure that you want to regulate your fellow students. That way they don't do anything wrong, because if they do something wrong, you're all going to get in trouble for it, even though you probably had nothing to do or didn't even know about the toothpaste going on the seat.
Yep.
Now everyone's being punished for it, because it's like, if you guys don't speak up, or if you don't stop people or whatever, everyone's going to get in trouble and you're going to suffer too. So it's like,
and you know what else? You know what else it does? It turns student against student as well.
Yep. Yeah. They would do that with us. They'd do like massive. The whole school would be out in what used to be the Kwanzaa hut. I don't know if they still have that, but it was like this giant outside like tent thing, and we would go out there and we do workouts for hours until someone ratted someone else out for something. And there's so many false claims where people would come forward and lie just to get out of the workout, trying to get out of it. But they just sit there and punish everyone for hours until someone broke and spilled the beans about somebody else. And then that guy would get the living crap beat out of him because he ratted, and ratted on somebody else. So it's like, there's no winning. You're either getting punished by the staff members in a group setting, or you're getting beat up by the other students because you ratted everyone else out.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a lose-lose situation. The best you can try and hope for is to avoid it. And that's what I did. My strategy to get out of as many of those group punishments as possible is I started working in the kitchen. And honestly, one of the two really good staff members were in charge of the kitchen. Brother Garrett and Miss Rachel. And those two were really, they helped me, and they were kind, and they would help me get away from the rest of the staff. They would tell the dean that they needed me and that I was busy and that I could not participate in workouts and stuff like that. And that was really where I went to just basically hide from, while the rest of the students would be, in push-up position or in the gym or, something like that.
Dang.
Props to them, man. Props to them.
Yeah, I know we can't say last names, but was Miss Rachel, was she married?
Yes.
You remember? Okay. I'm not sure if she's the same one I'm thinking about, but there was a Rachel.
I believe she was a staff daughter.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. There was a family that was there that had a daughter named Rachel when I was there, but she was just a young kid at the time. But I heard that she got married, so that's cool. Like, it sucks hearing all these terrible stories about the bad staff, but then you hear about there's some good staff there that are trying to do good or trying to help out, and you can't help. Because I remember being a staff member and trying to be cool with the kids and try to be on their side and stuff. They don't like that. Like, they pull you aside and they tell you, you can't be nice, you can't be doing this, you can't be showing them love, you can't be doing this kind of stuff. So it's cool that people are still kind of bucking the system and do what's right for the kids.
Well, in the kitchen, especially with Miss Rachel, what she would need is she would need some kids to help do inventory in the attic for her, to help lift boxes and organize things and rotate stock. So you're in an attic with just Miss Rachel, and so no one could see how nice she was being. She could act however she wanted.
Yeah.
I don't want to say too much because I don't know if she's still there. I don't want to get her in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
But
yeah. No, I got you.
yeah, she was really good.
If anything, what you're saying, I know not going in more detail about it, but just what you're saying about it, like if anything, it's helping the school not look as bad. So if
Right.
anything, if they do watch this and like, oh, Rachel, what? It's like, wait a second, like that really is like, I mean, she's making you guys look good.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like you said, James, when they say don't be nice to them, the whole point of a religious organization is to be nice, is to
Yeah.
to love that person no matter what their flaws are. That's the whole
Right.
point of these religions. But yet
Right.
it's the exact opposite at this place.
Their idea of love, like that, you're like, oh, they should be loving the kids. Their definition of love, everyone has a different definition, it seems, but their definition is what they're doing is showing these kids love. Like someone comment, I posted one of the podcasts on my Facebook, and like one of the guys that was at Agape when I was there commented on it, and I was like, dude, like, Agape saved our lives, man. We found God there. We need to be eternally grateful for these people for showing us God and showing us this and saving our lives. And it's like, dude, like, what? And I'm like, after all these years, he's still convinced that everything that happened at Agape, even said his restraints he went through. He's like, yeah, they would restrain me and they do all this stuff, but then they would tell me why they restrained me and tell me it was only because they loved me that they had to do this. And I'm like, that's psychotic. Like, they beat you up, and then afterwards, they abuse you. And then afterwards, they tell you why what you did caused them to have to abuse you, and that they love and care for you. It's like, that sounds like one of these, like, I don't know what you would call it, but there's a
Stockholm
relationship.
syndrome.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what that mirrors very closely. I mean, if you didn't know the context, I'd almost think you were describing like a domestic violence situation.
Yes, a battered wife syndrome.
Yes,
Yes. Oh yeah,
exactly.
he beats me up, but he's such a nice guy.
But I deserve it.
agree.
You know what? If
Yeah.
I did, I should have done the dishes. If I
Yep.
did, he wouldn't have to hit me if I didn't do. You're right.
Exactly.
And after all this time, they're still convinced that it's like, no, you should not ever have to hit a kid and abuse them, like, especially if you're just because you're angry at them because of something that happened.
Yeah.
Come on.
Mhm. Yeah, it's unfortunate to say the least.
Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate.
I know you got a list of things you want to kind of go through. Is there?
Um,
I'll make sure we touch on all of them.
I just so I guess we can talk, so their main mission at Agape is to to save souls, right? They go out and they have their bus and they go soul saving door to door,
Do
save
they?
souls.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So what I guess I'll just kind of give my experience with faith at Agape.
Okay.
I was raised pretty religious. Not pretty religious, non-denominational Christian. So kind of modern Christianity, New Testament Christianity.
Evangelical.
Yes,
Yes.
And that's what I believed growing up. And then I sort of kind of fell into a doubting agnostic phase that was only just strengthened. And every second there, I told everyone at Agape I was saved and I was Christian. But I was like, this is bull, basically. And it made me really grow apart from faith and God in a really, in a big way. And I eventually found God again through some really intense personal experiences later in life after Agape. But it's almost like that it had the complete opposite effect on me. Because what I saw is, if this is Christianity, I don't want it. And it took me until I found my own, something that I can, believe in and put my faith in later in life, that I really found God again. But
Yeah.
it had the exact opposite effect on me. It made me want to run for the hills, away from God.
That's the way a lot of people see it. If this is the way Christianity is, whether
Yeah.
it be they're abusing you physically, mentally, sexually, if this is the way they are,
You want nothing to do with
screw
it.
religion. Yeah, nothing to do with it.
Yeah. What is the whole? You want to be a witness? Be a good example of what Jesus would want you to be. And lead people to God by your example. Then it's like, this is not it. Like your example you used earlier, leading a horse to water, and like the way you said that was so well articulated. Like lead them to water and then forcing them to drink. Well, a horse needs water to live, but if you're shoving the face in the water, forcing them to drink, you're drowning it. Like it's not going to like water all that much, but of course it needs water to live. So it's like that's cool that you had God, lost God, even though it wasn't there, but you lost your kind of connection, whatever you want to call it, relationship maybe, and then refound it on your own. But it's sad that parents are sending their kids to Agape with the hope that they develop this relationship with God, and it more or less drives more people away from God than it does toward.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I do have one Julio story. I don't know if it's been shared, but I think it's a good one. So this is a story Julio would tell. He was proud of this. He talks about growing up. He said he would talk about how crazy he was and how he was in the streets and how tough he was. And he was like, "Man, I was so crazy." He told all the students that he dunked a feral cat in motor oil, set it on fire, and threw it in the street. And then he found God, and now he doesn't do that anymore. That was like his story he would tell the kids. And you know what that just screams to me? I don't want to play armchair therapist, but we have a literal psychopath as the dean of students working with kids every day. And if you've ever taken I took criminal psychology in high school, and the two first signs of a young psychopath, somebody who has an inability to feel empathy or emotion, is hurting small animals and starting fires.
Yep.
He just went 2 for 2. And you would see that psychotic, sadistic side of him come out when he got to restrain kids. Just this look in his eye that just scared me so much. I was so scared of that guy, man. And he was that big jack steroids guy. There was no fighting back.
Yeah.
You just had to pray that you weren't in his target.
And to piggyback off of that, I did a podcast with a lady named Donna. This was the Rebecca Home. And of course, just because you claim to be saved or have a personal relationship with Jesus doesn't mean that you still don't do the things you used to do before you were saved. She married a kid who was from the Anchor Home, and they became staff members. Well, he was an ex-heroin addict. Okay, he got saved. He got called to preach, as they say. But in the background, while Roloff, I'm sure you've heard of Lester Roloff. Well, Lester Roloff was gone. He was shooting up with his buddies, his fellow staff members. There was drinking, there was fornication, there was a whole bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes. The old saying again, the cat's away, the mice will play. You know what I mean? So just because you call yourself a Christian doesn't mean you're not doing stuff that you used to do before you were a Christian.
And I think really one of the unfortunate parts about that is, in their circles, in the independent fundamental Baptists, saying you're Christian, that's good as gold to them. I mean, that's enough where all of our stories are invalid. They don't believe any of us, right? Because how could these good godly men ever do something wrong?
Right.
They don't believe that they could have faults, I guess. And I think that's
Yeah. I think they think that it seems like just because someone claims to be a Christian, who's someone that's supposed to be Christ-like, that they're just as perfect as Jesus was, and never sinning. It's like no, then why do they need salvation in the first place? If they're perfect, they don't do anything wrong. It's like it's man, that's
James. After coming out of the Baptist religion, one thing that I learned: don't trust anybody, especially the people that call themselves Christians. I'm serious. I mean, I'm talking about. Don't get me wrong. There are some people who are Christians who believe in God who are great people. Okay? But there's some you could just tell. You just look at their face. It's like, okay, this guy's completely full of shit. This guy, you know what I mean? You could just see it.
Right.
Your
But it-
face,
the-
your face tells everything.
But the fact that you didn't learn that from like a rated R movie somewhere or something like that. You learned that from experiencing this denomination. We'll call it that, right? You experience that, and now that's taught you, because that's the same way. Like my family, like they're devout Christians. I was raised devout Christian, but my current beliefs are just pretty far from that in general. But then my family blames agape. They're like, well, we're really sorry that you had that kind of experience, and that was your example of what Christianity should be, and that's what drove you away from wanting to be a Christian. Like, we'll pray for you, So it's, but there are kids that come out of agape, they go to Bible college, or like, and they're doing okay, but it's weird. It's all across the board. There's some kids that come out and go right into drugs and kill themselves. There's kids that
Yep.
take a while to get their head straight. Some guys are just fine and dandy. Other kids are like, but I think the majority, like it's like a small percentage that go to Bible college that end up on this straight and narrow path, versus on the other side of the fence, like you're talking about, Calvin, like come out with all these like mental and emotional issues and trying to deal with it over the next 10 to 15 years to try to get our minds right after leaving that place. I think that's the majority of the people that leave there.
But like
Yep.
what was discussed, some of those kids that end up going to Bible college and being on the straight and narrow, they probably think that they did deserve it. I was a bad kid. Okay, well, I got restrained. I got my ass beat. I deserved it. That's not the case. Not at all.
Yeah.
Nobody deserves that.
You believe that? Yeah.
If I could just do a recount of the kids that I was there with,
Sure.
and kind of where they are now, I
Yeah.
would say out of maybe 40 kids that I'm still in touch with, I'd say 5 or 6 are in the military, doing good. I would say the vast majority left and turned right to drugs, alcohol, substance abuse, whatever they were doing before. Just right back. And
Yeah.
probably worse than ever if I had to guess. I never, got too personal with it.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
you can observe from a distance and see what's going on in somebody's life. And
Yeah.
if we're recording success rates, Agape has an extremely low success rate.
Well, it's how the thing is, to your point, it's how you define success.
That's
and
true too.
to Agape, they define success to your parents as, we'll get him listening to authority, and they want you to stay there till you graduate. And we'll get him a high school diploma if you keep him in the program.
Mm-hmm.
And so they tell you when you're in the program, you're here till you graduate. You need to finish these paces with this BS curriculum that you're not going to learn anything on. So you just hurry up and get done with that. Next thing you know, your parents are at your graduation at Agape, and they're like, oh my gosh, Agape delivered. They gave me a son. They gave me my son back, and he has a high school diploma. He wouldn't have got that without Agape.
A worthless high school diploma.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I agree with you about the success thing, but from parents' point of view, and that's why I think so many parents advocate still for Agape, they think it was a success because you have high school, you have a high school diploma now and you didn't,
Well, you know what it is, James? It's the illusion of success is what it is.
Yes.
They
Yes.
give the parents the
And even-
illusion. Yeah.
And even those kids that made it out or are in the military or are just doing whatever, you have to wonder what kind of baggage they're holding on to, that they haven't let the rest
Right.
of the world see.
Right.
What are they keeping inside? And
Yeah.
And
how much is that eating away at them?
And as far as the success rate, when it comes to Agape, the only success rate that's high is their financial one.
Absolutely.
Right. I'd love
Because
to see those numbers.
they are basically, and I hate to use this term, but it fits. They are raping these parents out of thousands and thousands of dollars
Yeah.
just to give them a
And-
worthless high school diploma and to beat the shit out of them.
Hey, don't forget about Mam's Zoo. They got that too.
Oh, yeah.
So you
Yeah,
can
all
look
the
at a zebra
exotic
out the
animals.
window. You can look at the zebra out the window. So that's where your money's
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
maybe some baby or there's a camel. There's a camel I think, or not. Maybe not
There
a
was
camel.
one. There was one that when I was there, they had
There
gotten a
was a
camel. And it was
camel.
like
Yep.
they
And then,
bragged about that, and we're like,
mm-hmm.
so how does that help us? Like
Yeah.
it's. I didn't send it to you, Jason. I'll have to send it to you after this podcast, but I got my hands on from the most recent parent handbook that they have. One of the pages in there that they give to the parents for the application, letting them know what their fees are going to be for the parents.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
how much it costs for the year? Almost 40 grand for the year for the kid to be at the school. And the first like there's the first month you have to pay for. There's like a $2,000 like deposit or something you have to put forth, or like an application fee or something. You pay for, they charge you for the uniforms. They charge you. There's all the stuff they charge you for. Um, and it's crazy. Like you see this, and you're like, what? And they say in there, it's like, oh, this barely covers the cost of us, taking care of your child, and also, just letting you know that Agape is a nonprofit. So if you feel in your heart that you want to donate money to Agape, you can also write this off in your taxes, whatever you donate to us. And it says that in the parent handbook that they give to the parents when they're to get their kids here at the Agape. I'm like,
After 3 years, you could get yourself a nice little 3-bedroom home for the amount of money you're spending
yeah,
on
I
that
know. I was
place.
there 3 years. I was there as a student. So yeah, so that's say 40 grand. Like that's insane. I can't
Yeah,
believe I'm.
Six-figure number.
120, 160,000. Yeah.
Jeez,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, not including whatever they reached out to my family for donations. Like, oh, we need that. They would
Right.
do that. Oh, we need to do this for the boys. Can you donate some money? Can we do a, I heard they do like a walkathon or jogathons to try to raise more money. Like, however many laps your son does, how much money will you be able to do per lap and stuff. It's like you're already making all this money and you're trying to like milk more out, but
So
Yeah.
I have one more quick story. I'll try to keep it quick.
Sure.
So I was a pretty high-ranking student by the end of my time there, and I got on what is called Ma'am's crew. Ma'am is the matriarch, Mrs. Clemenson, Jim's wife. So as a part of that, you get to walk through the Clemenson's personal household.
oh wow,
Brand new leather furniture, brand new flat screen, and I think you'll find this kind of funny. I walked through on a Sunday morning once, and Mr. Clemenson was watching Deadliest Catch on the flat screen. So I know we're supposed to stay away from all things sinful, but
right?
if Mr. Clemenson wants to watch a bunch of drunk sailors cuss for an hour,
You know,
he
you
can
know,
do that.
it's funny you say that because like I said, all these troubled teen homes. Okay, the epicenter, the main guy that started all this shit was Lester Roloff. Okay, and one thing that Lester Roloff hated, of course, it was smoking and drinking and stuff. TV. That was the devil's box, basically.
Hmm.
Back in the old days, when I went there in 1982, hush, James. 1982, there was only 3 lines. ABC, NBC, CBS. That was it. You only had 3 channels. Well, Roloff said they were called the 3 sewer lines. Okay, TV was, you were not to have a TV at all. That was forbidden. That was of the devil. And here Clemenson is with a goddamn TV,
Yep.
and he's supposed to
50-inch
be.
flat screen.
It wouldn't surprise me if Mrs. Clemenson was gone. Everybody else, he was in there by himself. He was watching bondage porn or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Not at all.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, when you see that when you're a student, especially if you buy into the program and the whole idea of like the religious aspect too, you buy into all this stuff, and about rock music, about all these things, right?
Yep.
And
Mhm.
you go and you see a staff member that you look up to completely like against, like breaking their own rules, basically their own religious rules that they set forth as the guidelines you're supposed to. And it just, for me, I remember hearing that they went on when I was there, I remember talking with them because I was same thing. I'd worked my way up in the student ranks, and they were talking about how they went and like rode jet skis down the lake, like Ma'am and her grandkids, and I'm like, I remember saying like, how did you ride jet skis in a dress? Like I was like, that's I can't even picture that. And she's like,
Right.
we were in bathing suits. Like, we're not going to wear dresses wearing jet skis. Are you crazy?
And those,
Like laughed it off, and in my mind, it blew my mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, what the hell?
And
You
those,
can't wear a bikini because that's a sin.
and those jet skis are probably paid for by your parents, Calvin.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the really just the biggest part of the hypocrisy there is Jim Clemenson has a chair on that stage during every Sunday service. You know, he sits there on, and near the podium of God, and he's one of the elders of the church, and he can't even follow his own, denomination's rules. It really, I don't know.
It really stinks of hypocrisy.
It does. It stinks
Big
of
time.
hypocrisy. It
Big
really
time.
smells. And
Yeah.
I just want to touch on one more thing because I think this is really important. It might be the thing that gets Agape shut down. Is actually when you mentioned the bondage porn, I thought of the sexual deviance and
The bondage porn.
specifically Jareth Clemenson.
Yeah.
Are you familiar?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm familiar.
Record.
Yes.
Yep. So the story. Has anyone gone into detail
From-
about the kids that would follow him around, the private piano lessons?
No. No.
So
No, this is new.
okay, I'll
We're
go
gonna-
into it.
We're going to have to put this on the front, James.
Yeah, this is exactly. If
A
you
little
can
clip. Yes.
move this around, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so there were probably what I can assume to be 3 kids that were definitely gay at Agape. And 2 of them followed Jareth around like his little puppy dogs. Jareth was in charge of the computer lab and they were always in there. And Jareth actually gave one of them private piano lessons. Private. So he was getting alone time with what we pretty much all assume to be a gay student. And, can we prove anything? Not really.
No.
All I'll say is the entire staff made jokes about what they must have been doing behind closed doors. Or not staff, the entire
right.
student body. The entire
Yeah.
student body had just some idea that something was up. And I mean, and at the time, none of us knew about what Jareth Clemenson did to those poor girls, but we can. I would almost bet money on it.
You know what's really sad is I looked up Jareth Clemenson and looked up his record. Yeah.
Yep. You can find it.
Yep. 14-year-old girl. I think it was a relative, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I do believe so.
And I looked up, he was convicted. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they
All
gave
the way
him,
through.
I think they gave him like 15 years.
Good.
But it gets worse. It was downgraded to probation.
You're kidding.
No.
No.
I'll see if I can find it again. It was downgraded to 5 years probation. So what happens is if he screws up again within those 5 years, he gets sent back to prison.
Wow.
So that family's got pull when
Yeah,
it comes to the justice system. I mean, they got that sheriff there. You know what I mean?
But that goes beyond the sheriff. That's
true. It does.
wow.
It does.
I know people who have done a lot more jail time for getting caught with weed twice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He's out here molesting 14-year-old girls, getting probation time.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone else is listening to this, imagine one of those. If anyone knows for sure, right? Anyone's listening to any ex-Agape Boys, whatever, and they know for sure, and or maybe even we're one of those guys, that would be an interesting story to hear. I know it's all hinted at, and the facts all kind of line up that there was, but without someone actually saying hey, yeah, that was me, and this is exactly what happened with it. It's kind of it's easily
hearsay.
denied.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's a good point. But by you saying this, because we've had people say stuff like this on the podcast, and next thing you know, the next guy that wants to talk, he'll hit up Jason. Hey, that was me. I'll come on and say something. So now that you brought this up,
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
know. Maybe one of those guys will hear it and will actually want to step out and say something.
I'll have to look up that site again with that record, and I'll post it on the description.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact there were definitely a lot of gay acts happening because they were happening in the pantry of the kitchen. And like I said, I was really involved in the kitchen. I mean, I've always been a pretty open and accepting person. I kind of just let it happen. Like, if two kids wanted to lock themselves in the pantry, I wasn't about to pop the door. Like, because that was the thing. You could pop the door to the pantry with a spatula.
Mhm.
So that's where kids would go to, steal or hide or
Do their deed.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've taken naps in that pantry before.
Yeah. There's a guy that from the time I was there that he had it really, really rough. I won't go into too much detail because I'll let him tell a story. But he had some stuff happen like that against his will. You're talking about consent, but it was
Yeah.
against his will from other students. And we recently someone mentioned his name, and I found him on Facebook, and like we got reached out. We're like, holy crap! Like, are you this guy? And he's like, yeah, that's me. And we're like, and told him about the podcast and everything that's happening. He's like, I will gladly come on and like talk about what happened and share my story. So it's like, so they're out there, and like I think you're right. Those things, the child abuse, it's a lot up to interpretation, right?
Mhm.
You're talking about these adults laying on these kids, putting their knees into them. I mean, the guys could be like, yeah, I didn't put my full weight on, or whatever. It's deniable. But then you get these sexual allegations going in here, and it's not even allegations. Like, I think people get behind sexual abuse a lot more than they do physical abuse
Yeah.
here in America, which is
It's
terrible. But
well, they both should matter, but it's just a
Yes.
buzzword, and one is going to get a lot more clicks, and one is going to, and I guess to sum it all up, what we know for sure, what we do know for sure that I can 100% attest to is that Jareth Clemenson, a known child molester, was given one-on-one time with children or with students at Agape.
yeah, right. See
And
that?
is that acceptable? If you're a parent listening to this, can you live with that?
Right.
That
I'll tell you one thing though, like James was saying. I mean, if I was a parent, which I am a parent, but if I was going to send my kid to this school and I hear, oh, okay, he gets restrained, okay, well maybe he did deserve it. Wait a minute, there's gay sex going on? Uh-oh, no.
Right.
No. Even if it's alleged, I mean, even if you just hear rumors about it, why take the
Right.
chance on sending your kid to that place? You know what I
And
mean?
even and the fact that there's opportunity, and it doesn't sound like it was a one-off thing. There's opportunities for these guys to do this kind of stuff there. Nothing against it, mind you. I guess I guess that comes in. That actually interesting thought just popped in my head. That kind of goes into the whole thing. I mean, if they're gay, more power to them. If they want to do gay, like they like make out, like do stuff like that with another
Yeah.
man, another boy at the school. I mean, really? I mean, like, is that? But from Agape standards, and I think a typical parent also that's sending their child to an independent fundamental Baptist school, they're probably not wanting their child to do that.
Yeah.
Even from our perspective, like it
Mhm.
especially if it's consenting.
Yeah,
Like that.
even if it is
Props
consensual,
to
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I mean, props to them that they were able to find their. I guess I don't know how to respond to that exactly. Like, as long as it was both consensual, great. But if it was one person, like you're talking about this Jareth guy, like if it was him, like in an authoritative position, taking advantage of a kid, then that is not cool. Even if the child, because it was how old was Jareth at this time that you're talking about? Was he an adult or was he a kid at the time?
Definitely an adult. I would say mid to upper 20s. If that's a guess, don't know
There
for
you go.
sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I can definitely confirm there was gay sex happening consensually between students. I can confirm that. I guess I would love to know for sure is if Jareth had any involvement in that. Because,
Right.
you could call that consensual, but at the very least, it's statutory.
No, you're right, and that's where if it's two students that are gay, and they have a
Yep,
thing for
they're
each other,
both
and they want to,
minors.
right. I don't know if there's anything wrong with that, like legally, if there's anything wrong with that,
Legally,
like
I
right,
don't think
exactly,
so.
right. But when Jareth, if he's mid-20s or whatever, I think even if he's a child, a staff child, and he's doing that kind of stuff, I think that is a really kind of, I don't know, like faded line to be on. But then if he's an adult,
Right.
just oh
And the thing
man,
is, what I've seen in documentaries and what I've read about child molesters is there is no gender boundary. Whether it could be a girl, it could be a boy. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Because it's not about the gender. It's about power.
yeah.
Power
And
over the
well,
person.
the other thing, if that to child molesters is usually it starts with they were molested, and this is total what do you
Anecdotal, yeah,
hearsay
yeah,
or not hearsay
yeah,
even, just I'm just totally guessing, but if I had to guess, Jareth Clemenson was probably molested growing up. Probably total. I have
yeah.
no information to support that whatsoever, but if I had to make a guess, I mean, and that's really what a lot of this super conservative, just the nature of the independent fundamental Baptists. It's gonna breed sexual deviance.
yeah,
It is.
Sure.
really, it
Especially
really
when
is.
especially when you have a school with nothing but boys in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Right.
I
Well,
mean?
the only comparison I can make is have you ever seen it was a show on TLC called like 20 Kids and Counting or whatever. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
So my mom was really into that show and my sister, and they would watch it all the time, but that show gave me the creeps. Absolutely gave me the creeps. And they do the modesty skirts and stuff like that, very conservative. I don't know exactly what denomination of Christianity they follow, but and then it turns out the one of the eldest
Yes.
sons was molesting his sisters,
Yep.
and it's just it goes to show that kind of family setting, it's just gonna breed that sexual deviance in pretty much the worst way possible.
Especially when sex is basically a no-no. You know what I mean? They
Hmm.
try and deter you from any type of sexual activity, watching anything, any magazines, anything.
Yep.
So what's that? All that's going to do is it's going to, when you got a young kid throbbing balls, as Jay would say, you know,
Yeah.
you want to release it. And
Yeah.
usually masturbation it gets old after a while. You know what I mean? You want the real thing, and you look, and pretty soon, it,
Yeah.
something bad happens.
And you're taught that this is wrong. You're taught that this is
Yes,
to
it's
go
a
up
sin.
to lust. You're taught that lusting after other women out and about is wrong and this and that. But then
Hmm.
like Jareth, all of a sudden he looks over to, I don't know, his family member or whatever, and he's like, oh well, maybe this isn't wrong.
Yeah.
It's like but when you stifle that, like it's natural. Like
Yep.
like you, man, woman, whatever. Like that attraction, like that physical desire. It's a natural thing that happens within humans, and you're trying to stifle that, and then you wonder where did we go wrong as parents, or where did we? It's like, come
Yeah.
on, really?
When you call something completely natural a sin, like you said, and you
Hmm.
deprive your kids of that, or
Yeah,
even knowing about it, yeah,
right.
yeah,
And not even on the sexual side of things, like the going away from the sexual, because that sometimes that's taboo, right? Going into just human interaction. So you're at
Yeah.
agape and you can't talk to people, you can't communicate, you can't speak to people,
yeah,
right? So you're taking that human nature of wanting to bond and relate to people and talk to them. You're taking that away completely, too. Like
Hmm.
yeah,
all this stuff, like going into the mental health aspect of it, like it is all this stuff is being like suppressed, and then you're talking about like majority of the guys from when you were there that you're still in touch with that are like, out in the world, like figuring things out now they can talk, now they can be sexually active, now they have access to drugs, now they can drink, now they can do all these things that they didn't learn how to deal with. It was just suppressed and told, no, you can't
Hmm.
be around this is wrong, like, and now they're being handed to it in the world, it's being handed to them in the real world, and like they're trying to figure it out. Like, no wonder we all go off for rockers when we leave Agape.
Well said,
Yeah.
James. Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Well
Well,
said.
here's another thing to that point is they never taught us to choose for ourselves. The
Right.
choice was always being made for you, and you were told it was wrong, but then you leave and you get out, and you do have those choices. And Agape didn't prepare you to deal with that, even a little bit. And
Right.
most of us chose wrong, myself included. After Agape, made a lot of those horrible choices that kind of spiraled for a little bit, and then you kind of catch yourself. But
Yeah.
Hmm.
But that's natural. That's life. You learn. Like you're trying to walk as a baby. You fall. You bump your head. You touch a hot
Mhm.
stove. You hopefully don't do that again.
Right.
Like it's not like your parents keep you away from stoves your whole life, and then
Right.
it's like they're like, "Don't touch it." And you're like, okay, now I know not to touch it anymore. You don't get that from Agape.
Yeah.
And it's like, I it sucks, man. It's like we're not taught how to like do stuff, and then when you get out, Jason, like we feel like I felt like I was way behind everybody. I felt like I was still a 15-year-old kid when I was 19, 20 years old.
And
Trying to, like,
overwhelmed.
yeah,
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 19 years old, and sometimes I don't feel like I'm done being a kid yet. It's
yeah,
just like I give them, a little development stunt or growth stunt.
Yeah.
right,
Agape
Called
took that.
Agape.
took that away from you. Sure
Yeah.
did.
yeah, yeah. And you're only there a year, dude. Some of these kids like
I know.
5, 6 years.
That's
Man, dude.
Yeah.
the,
But
yeah.
it, not only does it take away that, it takes away your dignity. It takes away your self-esteem. It
Yeah.
takes away your self-worth. It takes away all that.
Yeah,
You know?
It's because they spend so much time telling you that you're bad and that you deserve to be here and you deserve every punishment
Right.
because you're there, and that you are inherently bad because you are at Agape and you must have done something that was just so awful to get you sent here that you deserve every bit of punishment that they can dole out.
yeah,
And that
And-
does, it wears on
Yeah.
your psychological.
And that, in a nutshell, Calvin, is the Baptist religion. You're a sinner. You're no good. You're a piece of trash.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? The only way
Yeah.
to become, have some self worth and dignity is Jesus. That's the whole Baptist religion in a nutshell. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You're a worthless sinner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it got to the point where at the end of my stay, me and like the lunch table I had, or my couple closest friends, we called ourselves the maggot squads. We called ourselves the maggot squad because we felt like we got treated like maggots.
Wow,
So that's what we named ourselves, the maggot squad.
wow. It's oh man, dude. So you were there. It trips me out. Like when I was talking about, like someone's been there 5, 6 years. You were only there a year, right? Like
Right,
a year,
less.
less than a year. So and just from that, you're 19 years old. You were there.
Mhm.
What, 9 months, 10 months? How long were you there exactly? Roughly
5,
five.
really short, 5.
5 months,
Dude.
and it's had such an impact on your life, and like afterwards, all just from 5 months of being there, all the stuff, the therapy, the stuff that you've had to do to go
Mhm.
through to kind of undo what happened there.
My last weeks there, I was losing it, man. I was losing it. I wasn't all there. I don't think I was all there in my last few weeks. My pace count dropped significantly. I was going nuts, and luckily my mom pulled me out right in time.
So
Yeah.
maybe you covered this. Sorry, like it's been a long day for me. But did you cover why she pulled you out? Did you go over that already?
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I didn't. So basically, here I didn't really talk about my relationship with my mom at all, and I think this is really one of my best things I have to share. So the first thing that happened is I hated her. I hated her guts because I felt abandoned. I really truly felt abandoned by she's the last parent in my life. Your mother is the one person who's not supposed to abandon you. And I did. I felt crushed, abandoned, completely alone. And then I remember my 1 month came around and I was supposed to get a phone call on that Sunday, and I didn't get one. And then that next week came and I didn't get one. And then that next week came and I didn't get one. And then it was like something like 8 or 9 weeks in, I got my first phone call with my mom.
Wow.
And I basically, the last thing I said, fuck you, I hate you, and I hung up. And that was the end of our conversation. And then she came. I don't think she called again for another month and a half. And she came on my 4-month. And she kind of saw how we were being treated a little bit. But Julio and Alan still kind of had control of her opinion and told her that I still had work to do in the program, even though I was a Burgundy that had never been demoted. So I was basically, as high a rank as you could expect me to be, and I had never gotten in trouble, but I still had work to do in the program. And then she came back on Christmas, because you are allowed a Christmas visit. And Christmas there, man, that's a trip for one. I
Sucks, right?
Yeah, it does suck. It totally sucks. It's a little better if you have a visit. It is. But yeah, and then that was pretty much it. She took me off campus to a little Airbnb or whatever that she had rented, and we spent all day off campus, even though I wasn't supposed to be allowed off campus. And she basically, we kind of made an amends to some extent, and she agreed to take me out shortly. And that's really when I started to lose it, when I didn't know when I was going to leave, because that was eating away at me, because the only thing that I could think about was leaving.
Yeah.
And then eventually I left, and I hated my mom after Agape for probably another good year and a half. And it took a long time to forgive her. And eventually I did forgive her, because she said she didn't know. And I believe her, because, how would you know? How,
Right.
They're hiding it. They're hiding what the place actually is. So how could she have ever known, what she was getting into? And me and my mom have a great relationship now, and I think we're a lot stronger for it. But, that's just the product of hard times.
Well, like I've said before on the other podcast, and James has heard it before, parents make mistakes, man.
Yeah. Yeah,
They
and
make mistakes. I've made mistakes more than I can count with my children. You know what I mean? So
and I wasn't ready to be okay with that for a long time, and yeah, it was a really, really tough spot, for a while there. But eventually, it did work itself out. Because I don't know.
But so from everything you've shared, right, and especially what you shared right there, you remember you had to write the letter to your mom, right? And I'm assuming you assumed that they sent it. So you poured your heart out in this letter. Your mom sent it. The time for her to call comes. She doesn't call. But from your mom's perspective, she never got a letter from you. She never got this heartfelt, apologetic letter from you. So here you are thinking that she got it and she should want to talk to you. She never got that. So maybe she's sitting there wondering, what's going on with you? I'm not hearing from my son at all. Maybe, and all she's hearing is what Agape's telling her. And so she's not calling you right away, because she's like, okay,
he's doing good. He's doing good. Yeah.
Right. He's doing good, or he's doing bad. And I just don't want to be a problem, So there's two sides to the story. So whatever Agape was feeding her, your letters weren't getting out, and you thought they were. All that's happening is just tearing you guys further apart. Her perspective of you is being ruined, your perspective of hers being ruined, to the point where you talked to her on the phone and you end up with an FU first time talking to her, and now that you guys have had a chance to actually talk and mend everything and put it behind you, you guys have a great relationship. No thanks to Agape,
Yeah.
But, I mean, I guess maybe thanks to Agape, because you went through a traumatic thing, both of you, which was Agape, and now you've been able to come together after it. But that's awesome that you have that relationship. But that just what Jason said. The parents always make mistakes, and what Agape is doing with that, dude, it drives the parents and the children further apart. It doesn't bring them together.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Gosh. Yeah. I'm glad you shared that, dude. Like that. And I'm glad it ended well.
It did. Yeah. That's why I'm here right now. Because, I guess I am proof that you can make it out on the other side. You can be better for it. I mean, if I could go back in time and undo my time at Agape, would I? Definitely. But like, I mean, I don't know actually, but you it's I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I guess you can make some good of this. If you are already in that position, you can make some good of what's, what happened at Agape.
And there are some families that come out of Agape, and some have been on the podcast, where they don't have a good relationship with their parents. They haven't talked to them in years.
Yeah.
I
You know,
believe
Still
it.
up to school or whatever,
So
you know.
yes, so it's always nice to see, or nice to hear, when even though this you've been through this trauma and your mom has been through this, that you're able to connect again, and
Hmm.
and have a good relationship. That's good.
Yeah.
But like
Good.
the way you put it, I think where you sound like you're trying to get to is that it's a choice. Like you chose, you went through it and everything. Like, I think some guys go through agape and they let that dictate the rest of their life, and they're a
Hmm.
victim, and they blame. Like I've friends that are like that from agape still, and their lives are in ruins, and they blame agape still. They're 30 something years old, going on 40, and they still blame agape for everything. It's like, but then there's other people I know that, they don't blame agape. They take charge of their own life, and they don't let what happened there dictate and control them anymore. So props to you, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think what it came down to is if you want to hold on to that bitterness and that anger and that hate, that agape kind of, you're gonna leave with some of that for sure. If
Yeah.
you want to hold on to that, you can, man. You can hold on to that for as long as you want, and it'll kill you eventually. But I
And
Yeah.
guess
and the
I
thing
just
is,
let go.
take it from a parent. I mean, I had a wonderful relationship with my parents. Okay, they did some stuff. They made mistakes just like I have,
Hmm.
but we've always had a good relationship, and they're not here forever. Okay, you know that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
my mom passed away in July. You know, so,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that I'm not glad that she's gone. I wish she was still here, but at least I had a really good relationship with her. We had good memories. You know what I mean?
I mean,
So,
not to get too general here, but that's really all you can hope for with this life thing, man. I mean, no one really knows when your time's gonna come,
yep,
but if you have good memories and you had good times, that's all you can ask for.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
You never know
100%.
what you never know when you're going to punch out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right.
It's
Well,
a deep
guys,
note.
on that note, right?
It
So,
was good though. It was really
yes,
good.
Good.
it was. So, like I say, if you watching this for the first time, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button. It's especially parents that have been. If you have any questions, you can. My number is on the top of the channel page. Feel free to message me. Text. Do not call. I've had a lot of people trying to call that number. Please don't call. Please text, because most of the time I'm at work and I can't answer the phone. So, but yes, with more subscribers means more people seeing these podcasts. All right.
Absolutely.
Thanks to Calvin. Thank you, Calvin, for being here. I appreciate you telling your story.
Absolutely.
It
Thank
was
you for giving
powerful.
me an opportunity to tell it. And
And
thank you for all the work you guys are doing. I mean, all I had to do was show up and talk about myself. That was really easy. You guys put in the hard work recording, organizing,
editing,
and
yes,
editing,
Yeah, that's
and
Jason
that's
doing all
yeah.
that.
yeah,
I do the same thing,
Thank
dude.
you, man.
I maybe help coordinate a little bit, of getting the guy
yes.
on. That's bad. Jason does majority of the hard work. I just
But
sit
James,
here and
James, you're
smile.
a huge help, man. You are a huge help. You know,
Yep.
you and James, the other James.
Yeah, Jay
So
James. Yeah,
James, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's you guys are important to this. You really are.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So go ahead and stay on the on there for a minute, and I'm going to end the podcast, okay? So, for the Hammer Podcast, I'm Jason. You take care of yourselves. You take care of each other, all right? Okay. There you go.